Well, it's been about a day and a half or so since the United States imposed a 25% tariff on most goods coming into the US from Canada. And businesses here in Manitoba are already feeling the impact. And that's what we're talking about today on This is Manitoba. Well, from here in Winnipeg to the border, businesses are wondering what to do. We're also going to talk a little bit about what this could mean for your pocketbooks. We're going to talk to an economist as well today on This is Manitoba. I'm Corey Funk, sitting in for Marcy Marcusa. And first up here on the podcast, for one small business owner, the impact tariffs could have on her is still pretty unclear. Amelia Barnes is the owner of Prana Vida Style here in Winnipeg. It's a slow fashion, sustainable clothing store. It's been around for 12 years, and she started out cutting fabric in her basement. And now she's concerned about what the future could look like. So Amelia says 50% of her customers are American, but it's unclear how it's called, quote, de minimis exemption will affect her bottom line. If you're wondering what that is, it essentially means that shipments under $800 would be exempt from tariffs or duties unless the U.S. Secretary of Commerce says otherwise. So I spoke with Amelia about how this confusion is impacting her business. Good morning to you.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
So how do you feel about these tariffs that are happening?
Well, it's all very confusing. I feel like every day I wake up and I check to see what's going on. It's something new. So it's all quite uncertain right now, especially with the $800 de minimis. Like, how long is the exception going to last? Is it going to last maybe, a few weeks, maybe a month or two? For me, it does really matter because my business often does pre-sales to produce because we are a smaller business and we want to make sure that we're not overproducing. To be more sustainable, we'll do a pre-sale, get orders, and then manufacture, and in a month or two ship out our orders. So it's really helpful for customers to know when they order if these tariffs are going to be in place or not. But that being said, I've been sharing updates through social media and my email list. And the response that I've been getting has been overwhelmingly positive, which really reassures me. Like, even my American customers have said that they would love to still continue supporting. And I've had other U.S. Customers reach out and say, I've never ordered from you before, but I'll be more likely to now. So that's kind of cool.
Oh, really?
But yeah, it's actually been surprising and interesting.
So
and
actually,
of course, Canadians always have my back. So
Yeah.
I'm feeling a little more reassured now, but it is very confusing. And who knows what's going to happen going forward.
So have you actually noticed an uptick or downtick in sales since these tariffs became a thing at all, or is it too early to say?
It's a little hard to say because right now we're kind of at in-between point. So most of our winter collection is sold out. We do have some things left, but it's not like a wide amount of selection. But I have noticed some orders from new customers, so that's a good sign. And then next week is our summer collection pre-sale launch. And so that will be like the telling factor then, because that's when we'll have a wide onslaught of orders, hopefully a big amount of orders, and I'll be able to see who's ordering and what's happening. But yeah.
So I understand it's about 50% of your customers are American, and like we've heard from both sides of the border, there's going to be over time a long-term economic impact. And for some people, maybe they see clothing as a luxury item. Are you nervous at all that over time people are, it might be you might lose sales as the economy potentially contracts a little bit?
That is definitely a concern, and obviously, clothing, and especially the higher priced clothing. So my clothing is slow fashion. They tend to be more investment pieces. They last a really long time. They're really high quality. But we're competing against big box stores and, $10 t-shirts and things like that. It is hard to push through. But I think we do a pretty good job at it. And I feel like I have a really loyal customer base. And I also think that for a slow fashion small business, we are able to give the most competitive prices possible because I am selling direct to consumers, and I also have very low overhead, so I don't do any paid advertising. I run the business out of my home, don't pay any rent for an office space or anything like that. So I'm able to and especially with pre-sales and that kind of method of manufacturing, I am able to give good prices and very fair prices. So I think that customers appreciate that, and they want to support local and Canadian, which is amazing, and I really appreciate.
Mm. But yeah, before I let you go here, is there any supports that you think you could be helpful for you? If sales do drop from these tariffs, from either the province or the federal government, that could be of use to you.
No, I'm not really sure. I haven't thought too much about that yet. But I think just having small businesses like interviewing, that obviously is great because maybe I'll connect with some new people through this interview, and maybe having a directory of small businesses that you can support. I'm sure there's things like that already out there, but having more of that is also great.
And actually, before I let you go here, we are asking this morning, it's kind of our question for listeners. What's your favorite local product, obviously, besides your own? Anything come to mind?
Oh my goodness, my favorite local. Okay, well, I did just buy some new jewelry from a local jewelry company, Sydney Rose, and I'm wearing the earrings and the necklace right now, and I'm very excited about it because I don't normally wear jewelry, but I actually love her minimalist style. So yeah, that's what I'm loving right now.
There we go. Well, Amelia, thanks for taking the time, and all the best as you kind of navigate this very confusing time for small businesses. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Well, that was Amelia Barnes. She's the owner of Prana Vida Style. Well, Buy Canadian is a mantra that's been getting louder and louder now that the U.S. President Donald Trump has imposed those tariffs that we've been talking about already on the show. And yesterday, in response, the Manitoba government started pulling U.S. products from the liquor store shelves and offering tax deferrals to Manitoba businesses. But what do you do if your business is right on the border with the U.S.? I spoke with Simon Resch. He's the owner of the Emerson Duty Free, which sits right on the Canadian side of the border before you cross. And he told me what he was seeing outside his window. Good morning to you.
Good morning, Corey. Thanks for having me.
So I just want to start actually with what you've witnessed the past couple of days being at the border. How busy was it yesterday and this morning as well?
Well, to be honest, not witnessing that much. It's a ghost town down here.
Really? And I understand, because I know we had a guest on yesterday saying it was really busy the month leading up to, well, yesterday, as people tried to get stuff over the border before the tariffs come into effect. But now, like, how ghost towny is it normal this time of year to see something like that? Like, when's the last time you saw it that ghost town-y?
Well, to be honest, like not even during COVID and the border closure. Of course, we had all kinds of trucks moving back and forth between Canada and the US. Trade wasn't impacted during the COVID border closures. What we're seeing now is definitely an anti-travel sentiment, at least, shifting the sentiment away from travel towards the United States. So that has an impact on southbound leisure travel. But normally at this border crossing here, we would see trucks lined up, dozens, sometimes by the hundreds, waiting to export from Manitoba into the United States. And so far this morning, it was the same thing yesterday. I've been here now for a couple of hours, and I've counted 2 trucks leaving Manitoba. That is unprecedented. We have never seen that.
Wow. And so I imagine that translates into less sales for you, obviously, less people coming into the duty free. But is there any, I know it's duty free, but do these tariffs have any other impact on your business?
So far, they don't. It took quite a while for us to figure out whether or not the tariffs would impact sales from our business. Thankfully, yesterday afternoon at about 12:30 p.m., we got confirmation from US CBP that personal importations would not be affected by these tariffs. So our duty-free exemptions remain intact. That's obviously a great thing for us. Now we just need some customers to sell product to.
And in terms of the products you do sell, would counter tariffs or any of the countermeasures have any impacts on those as those kind of come into effect?
We're not entirely sure. There's a possibility. Of course, we sell products from the United States as well as from Canada, not nearly as much. But nonetheless, a bottle of Jack Daniels that typically moves quite well, or some other U.S. Beverage alcohol products, bourbon and beer. Whether or not Canadian counter tariffs would apply to products that we want to re-export back into the United States, we have not received any confirmation or any clarification from Canada or from Manitoba with respect to how that may impact us.
And what kind of conversations have you been having? I mean, I don't know how many customers came into your store yesterday or today so far, anything like that. But even leading up to this, what have people been saying? Have in terms of why they're buying what they're buying, and what's influencing them and their thoughts on the tariffs and the situation with the Canada and U.S.
Well, definitely a focus on buying Canadian.
Yep.
And that's also, I mean, it's actually good for us. Our sales, by regulation, by law, must be made to people who are traveling into the United States. But our focus is distinctly Canadian. It's one of the reasons that we exist, is to promote Canada, Canadian products, and Canadian culture to people who are leaving the United States. And so we have a huge assortment, a huge range of Canadian product. And that's 100% where the focus is these days.
How concerned are you that these could impact you long term? Obviously, the things you sell aren't necessarily subject to the tariffs, but last couple of days you said it's been a ghost town. So, do you expect this low traffic to keep up in the long term if these tariffs keep in place? And how are you preparing for that?
Yeah. So, I mean, traffic has been impacted at the border, obviously, since COVID-19, August of 2024. So just at the end of summer last year, we saw a return to 2019 southbound traffic levels. So people leaving Manitoba, leaving Canada, and traveling into the United States. That was a massive disruption. It looks like we're in for another long haul in terms of impact to southbound travel patterns from Canada. But from our perspective, I think it's important to keep in mind that the United States will always be there. Donald Trump, the Trump administration, and this current situation between Canada and the United States, although it is very aggravating on this side of the border, it will not last forever. And the United States will be there long after the situation that we're in. And so from a long-term perspective, although we do expect this to be the situation for some time, we feel very strongly and very positively about what we have built together with the United States. And the fact that the U.S. is a friendly and open trade and travel partner for us Canadians. That's not going to go anywhere. And of course, we look forward to a time when we can get back to everybody feeling positive about that situation.
Well, Simon, we'll leave it there. Thanks so much for your time this morning. Really appreciate it, and all the best.
Thanks, Corey. Same to you.
Simon Resch is the owner of the Emerson Duty Free right on the Manitoba side of the U.S. border. Well, we are talking about buying Canadian, but I mean, it's one thing to say buy Canadian, but what do you do when maybe you don't have as much money as you did before, or things are just more expensive than they were before? Leaders and economic experts are suggesting that now might be a good time to get personal finances ready for an uncertain future. And of course, even the Prime Minister yesterday said that these are going to hurt. And even on the U.S. side of the border, officials are saying these tariffs are going to hurt people in their wallets. So I spoke with Moshe Lander. He is a senior lecturer in the Department of Economics at Concordia University about what we can do on our day-to-day to get our finances in order. So moving to these tariffs here and the impacts they'll have on our pocketbooks. What are the biggest short-term financial impacts on Canadians from U.S. tariffs?
So contrary to what the president said, tariffs are going to increase the prices of American goods and services. So if you're an American consumer and you're buying stuff from Canada and you now have to pay more, the law of demand says you want less of that stuff. That means that production in Canada is going to fall. It means that there are job losses that are going to happen. It means that we're going to see businesses that shut down, particularly things like the auto companies in Ontario are going to run out of stock and just decide that it's best to just suspend operations indefinitely. And we're going to have a recession in this country for the first time in a long time. And so all of those things are going to make things more difficult for all Canadians across the board. If you're a Canadian consumer, you now have to contend with counter tariffs. And so if you're buying anything that's on the hit list, those goods are going to go up, maybe not 25%, but they are going to go up in price. And so if you have the double problem of losing your job or seeing your wages cut because of the American tariffs, and you now have to pay more at the grocery store or elsewhere, you could really find yourself in a cost of living problem.
So how much should Canadians be concerned about inflation rising due to tariffs?
They should absolutely be worried. The president is flat out wrong. Tariffs increase prices. Maybe not 25%, but they do increase it. Now, the good news is that the Bank of Canada is committed to keeping inflation between 1% and 3%. And so they will do what they need to try and prevent inflation from getting too far out of control. For any cynics who say, well, what happened a couple of years ago when they allowed it to get up to 8%? That was because provinces still had varying degrees of COVID restrictions in place. I'm in Quebec right now. We had masking and social distancing longer than anybody else in Canada. And the Bank of Canada said it's not right that we try and slow down an economy when people can't freely move about the cabin. This time we don't have those restrictions. And so when the Bank of Canada meets next week, I think interest rate cuts are over for the time being. And if inflation really does become a problem, interest rate increases could be something that we start talking about again.
Big ones or little ones?
They always start as little ones. They don't become big ones until you've exhausted the little ones.
Okay. So what steps should Canadians be taking right now to protect their personal finances in case the situation does worsen?
Well, it's unfortunate because if you've waited to the last minute to decide that, hey, maybe we're in trouble, half the battle has already been lost. Trump was talking about this on the election campaign 6 months ago. It was just a matter of when. And once we saw that he was reelected 3 months ago, we should have known that this was coming. If you didn't take any of those precautions early on, all I could say to you right now is you have to prioritize what is important. If something is absolutely essential, you can't imagine doing without it, then you buy it from whoever gives you the biggest bang for your buck. And if that's an American company, hold your nose, but don't try and take patriotism and make your cost of living problems worse. If it's something that's not essential, postpone it. You don't need it right now, so don't worry about it. And whatever discretionary spending you have left over can be allocated towards the things that you push as higher priorities. Have that conversation with your loved ones. Have that conversation in a transparent way. If you have children, you can involve them in it. You can make a game of it. You don't have to explain the details of how tariffs work or don't work, but you can at least say, look, maybe we can't take that trip to Disneyland, but is there somewhere else that we could go, or is there something else that we could do that would make up for it, and give some consideration, and at least they understand that they need to make economies as well.
And when do you kind of suspect these will really start seeing that impact on our pocketbooks? Like, could it be this week, or do you think it might still take a little while for it? Will it creep up slowly, or all of a sudden we'll be at the grocery store and be like, oh my gosh, a $20 avocado?
Yeah, so it does happen gradually. I think the companies are going to try and hold off as long as they can before they pass it on to their customers, because we don't know how long it's going to last. If you told me that this is going to last for 10 years, then I think you'd see the cost increases come along pretty quickly. But I think part of it, too, is knowing which goods are going to be subject to tariffs, and do you have substitutes available? Because you can avoid the tariff if you know that you have alternatives. If you don't have alternatives, then you probably are going to see it very quickly. The other aspect, of course, is that the tariffs only apply starting yesterday. So if goods have already made it into Canada prior to yesterday, they're not subject to tariff, even if they're on the tariff hit list. So the perishable items, the stuff that needs to be replaced pretty quickly, are the places where we're going to see it quickly. I think a lot of the food items that come from the U.S. are going to be the ones where we see it first. Weirdly enough, on the list is torpedoes. So for anybody who's in the torpedo market, you could find that you're going to pay a lot more too for whatever you need torpedoes for these days.
I stocked up beforehand, so I'm good to go.
Me too. I used the GST tax holiday to get all.
So, in terms of what steps should the federal government take to help reduce the impact on Canadians? I know we talked about interest rates. That's Bank of Canada, but in terms of the federal government itself, what should be done?
The Prime Minister said that he was going to make sure that there was support within EI and the existing welfare programs to help people that lose their job. I'm going to actually offer a little bit of unsolicited political advice to any Liberals that are listening out there. What you can do is you can take your gimmick from a few months ago, which was bad economics but good politics, and spin it now so that it's actually good economics. Suspend the GST indefinitely. As long as the tariffs are here, Canadians don't have to pay GST on anything, regardless of where it comes from. Lower income Canadians who have to spend all of their disposable income are going to get essentially a 5% tax cut. Higher income Canadians who spend a portion of their income are going to get that 5%, but only on a portion that they actually spend. If they want more 5% tax cuts, they can spend more of their money and help prop up the economy. And the Liberals can call it an axe the tax program. And so you neutralize the Conservatives and their axe the tax program. This is something that all Canadians can get behind, where the Conservatives don't have complete support for their axe the tax program.
Moshe Lander is a senior lecturer in the Department of Economics at Concordia University. And if you are a torpedo collector, be sure to give us a call. We'd love to have you on the show to tell us about your very large and probably very illegal collection. You just email me, corey.funk@cbc.ca. And of course, as you can imagine, this is very quickly changing this news. We're recording this just so we're kind of timestamp it here on Tuesday morning around 9 a.m. So if you're wondering, hey, this is kind of outdated, well, that's because things change quickly. And we are going to keep covering these stories and the impact that these tariffs are having on Manitobans. So stay tuned if you like, and you share, and if you like it, you can share it. Tell your dad, tell your mom, tell your friends. This is Manitoba. That's the podcast to check out. See you later.